Hey guys, it is Mitchell, and today I want to talk about how the future of photography and the future of cameras isn't really photography. If you're new to my channel, I make videos about cameras, the tech that I use to create things with, as well as tips and tricks in Adobe Lightroom and Adobe Premiere. Kind of a rainy day out here in Hanoi, Vietnam, and if you guys want to see more videos about life outside of the US, I'll have a link in the description down below to my other channel, which is just about living abroad and travel. So in the upcoming couple days, we're going to be having some announcements from Sony, probably the new 24mm f1.4 G Master, along with a 135 f1.8, but that's not what I'm here to talk about today. Today, I want to specifically talk about how the future of photography and the future of cameras and image making isn't really photography. Now, what do I mean by it's not really photography? Well, prior to, I guess, the common era that we have right now, and I would say the time that we've had kind of prior to the Canon 5D Mark II, we had still cameras that were made for still imaging, and we had video cameras made for video making. And after the 5D Mark II came out, we had this huge revolution where camera manufacturers realized that there was a market for small and amateur creators who wanted to shoot video with interchangeable lenses. And that brought a ton of change to the market in regards to cameras like the Panasonic GH4, the Panasonic GH5, GH5S, the Sony series of cameras, the A7S, A7S II, A6000, 6300, 6500, were all cameras that came to the market with a slew of really capable video features and video capability that we now have. And if we look towards the future of what video cameras and image making kind of is, we can see that the form factor that we have right now, being the smaller or more compact mirrorless body with interchangeable lenses, is kind of becoming the de facto size tool package, whatever you want to call it, for small professionals or small entry-level professionals and video makers worldwide. And because of that, we're seeing a huge revolution happen on the photography side of things in regards to camera features that are now made possible because of the data processing needed to handle 4K video. And what do I mean by that? Well, in order to have full-time autofocus during 4K video recording, you have to be computing a tremendous amount of data. And you have to be able to write a lot of that data to a memory card extremely quickly. And because of that, we are seeing companies that we would not normally think of as being revolutionary camera manufacturers bring cameras to market that are really changing the game. But Fuji recently announced the new X-T3, and one of the things that I saw some coverage on, but I didn't see a ton of coverage about, was Fuji's emphasis on their ability to process data with the internal processor of the new X-T3. And I found it really interesting that Fuji made such a deal and made such an emphasis on talking about its data computational abilities. And along with that, there's been a lot of speculation that the sensor that's in the X-T3 is either manufactured by Samsung, or Samsung now has a role or some hand in the bones or what makes up the Fuji X-T3. And I think that Samsung's involvement in digital imaging devices is really interesting. Samsung had the NX1 and they had their NX line of cameras. And unfortunately, while their cameras were beyond ahead of their time, I'm talking about H.265 before H.265 was a widely used codec. We're talking about 290 something phase detection autofocus points. We're talking about full sensor phase detection auto points before sensors were covered with phase detection autofocus points. And one thing that no one on YouTube is talking about is the fact that along with electronics and apparently imaging sensors, Samsung also makes SoCs, or system on chip chipsets for their cell phones. And they make the Exynos line of processors. And in America, the Exynos line of Samsung devices is not very popular, simply because it does not support the LTE bands that we have in America. Well, one thing that the Exynos line of chips is phenomenal with is single core performance and overall just really, really powerful processors. In fact, on Geekbench and on comparisons, the Samsung processors are almost as fast as Apple and their A11 and A12 Bionic series, which are considerably faster than the Snapdragon 845 in measurable tests. In real world, that's totally different, but we're talking about theoretical data throughput and the ability to compute things and use multi-core and single core for a variety of tasks. And I think that because of Samsung's experience with microprocessors and SoCs, although it's not a straight apples to apples comparison, I think that if Fuji continues to partner with Samsung and maybe gets more Samsung involvement, we could really see a monumental change in the capabilities that we have in digital imaging devices, not because Samsung makes great cameras, but because Samsung makes sensors and system on chip or SoC processors that are really advanced, and they have the manufacturing and the production that can keep up with the demands of camera manufacturers. So I think that the future of digital imaging is maybe less about who has the greatest lens lineup or who has the greatest assortment of camera bodies, but who partners with the best processors for their cameras. Because at the end of the day, autofocus during video, face tracking, eye detection, they're all things that require processing power. And they're all things that require a certain amount of digital image processing in camera. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see where this goes over the coming years, even the next 6 months, for who is doing the best in-camera computational processors and who can deal with and who can process the data coming off of the processors the best. Now hold that thought. Because the thing that just came to me while I'm talking about this that hasn't been brought up is that the reason that the Google Pixel line of phones has been so tremendously successful and had such well-regarded cameras is not because the camera module is something that other manufacturers don't have, but it is because of the image processing and the computer intelligence, if you want to call it that, on the device. And it's going to be really interesting to see which camera manufacturers adopt this. Now, back to where I was talking before. I think that a year from now, we're not going to be talking as much about dynamic range, or we're not going to be talking about the ability to who can shoot 4K, who can't shoot 4K. I think that we're going to be talking about image processing, in-camera computational power, and ultimately, who is putting the best computers inside their camera. Okay, this rant is over. Like always, if you guys like the rant, if you have thoughts on it, if you want to tell me it was bad, if you want to tell me it was good, go ahead, leave them in the comment section down below. And I think that the conversation about computational photography and computer power inside of cameras is something that we need to be having more of. Okay, peace.